Hot topics like South Africa's fiscal and growth positions are being discussed there, as well as how the current uncertainty around trade wars is affecting emerging market currencies. To tell us what is happening there, we're joined by Nompumelelo Siziba. She is standing by for us at the conference in Sandton. A very good morning to you, Nompu. The midterm budget is around the corner. What is the ratings agency's expectations in this regard?
Thanks very much, Desiree. Yes, the midterm budget is around the corner, and of course South Africa is under a lot of pressure. And one of the things that Moody's has raised concerns around is the budget deficit. So in the February budget, the government or the finance minister had anticipated that the budget deficit would be about 3.6% of GDP. But now what Moody's reckons is that actually it will be well entrenched above 4%. So 4% of GDP, that is the budget deficit. And of course, they're asking questions around, with us being in a recession, how are we going to manage to collect revenue? They say the fact that National Treasury or SARS is pushing even harder to ensure that they collect revenue from people who are trying to evade tax. Those measures are now more crucial than ever, because obviously we have a slower growing economy, and so less sources for government to actually draw revenue from at the current moment. So they're saying that these are one of the concerns that they have. They're also concerned obviously about growth. They're now pegging growth at around below 1%, that is for this particular fiscal year. But they're still positive about South Africa insofar as they're saying that it seems as though there's a will for government to push through the policies that it wants to push through. In terms of, let me not jump the gun, but let me ask you, you can ask me the next question.
Well, I suppose any type of positivity at this juncture really helps. But Nompu, what are they saying about emerging market currencies, including the rand, and the reasons why we've seen them tumble in recent weeks?
Yes, so obviously we've had a bit of an emerging market rout happen in recent weeks, and this has had to do with, it was triggered off by Turkey. Turkey has a very high debt in foreign currency. It's got high foreign currency debt. Something about 50% of the foreign currency that it has is around that level. So as a result, it's got higher inflation in that country, and there's been reticence on the part of the government to raise interest rates there. The Central Bank of Turkey wanted to go ahead and do it, but it seems as though the president got involved. So markets became concerned about the central bank's independence. And then on top of that, the real trigger was when the United States decided to levy massive import tariffs on their steel and aluminium. So for us, I think it's about 10% on aluminium and 25% on steel. But with them, they went all the way up to 20% on aluminium and 50% on steel, really hammering them. And at that point, that's when people just started to sell out of Turkey. As a result, there's this concept of emerging market contagion. When that happened, investors started selling out of all emerging markets, and that includes South Africa. And then we began to feel the effects of the rand sell-off and the currency depreciating thereafter. But our fundamentals are different to Turkey's, and as a result, we were not hit to the same degree as Turkey because, of course, the fault didn't lie with us. But because we're an emerging market, it's a problem for us.
Nompu, is there any conversation at all about land reform efforts in South Africa?
Yes, that question was put to them, and what they say is that they are working on the basis of what the government has said. President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that there's a process that's underway that seeks to ensure that there's proper land distribution, and that's why this whole conversation about expropriation of land without compensation is taking place. And he's also assured that whatever does happen, it will not harm economic growth, it will not harm security of tenure, and all of those kinds of things. So they say they're working on the premise that what he's saying is correct and true, and that obviously everything is going to be done within the law. So they say their point of view would only be changed in a negative way if they could see that that wasn't the case. So from their perspective, they think that land redistribution in the longer term could actually be a boon for the country, because obviously if more people have access to land and they can utilize it and become more economically productive with it, that's great news for all of us. And I think that's ultimately what the intention is. But I think everybody has been saying it's the mechanism that is used, the way in which this process is handled is the most important thing, because the goal is actually quite noble.
Thank you so much, Nampu. I imagine you'll give us more detail in your show that comes up at the top of the next hour.